Hello, Internet. So nice to see you. Today we are here for another one of our guitar theory talks live. Absolutely, completely, unadulteratedly live. So, tonight we want to talk about acoustic guitars. And yes, I know I have an electric guitar in my hands. That's what happens. But we're going to talk about acoustic guitar. And we are streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook. If you are there, say hi in the chat. I see people are already from Puerto Rico saying hi. Hi, Rafi. And anybody else is in the chat, say hi. And tonight, you guys may wonder why we're doing this at 6 p.m. my time and not as earlier as usual. It's because tonight our guest comes from down under. He's a friend of mine from Australia. Okay, and this friend of mine has a very original approach to acoustic guitar, and he's gonna share some of his secrets with us. So, his name is Simon Kending. So, hello, Simon. How's it going?
Hey, Tommaso. How you doing?
I'm great. Okay, and I hope the same of you. What time is there down in Australia right now?
For once, it's actually a reasonable hour. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. So I have done these sorts of live streams at like 4 in the morning and 2 in the morning before. So this is perfect.
Yes, yeah. Usually when we meet, it's like super early for you. And I never know if you stay up late or if you wake up really early. It's that kind of like 4 a.m. in the morning that neither of them is a good option for you. So, but no, this time we're going to do this at this hour. So it's going to be a bit easier for you. And by the way, it works great for me too, honestly. 6 p.m. for me, it's a great hour. But let's talk guitars, okay? Let's talk guitars. So, Simon, the first thing I want to talk about, most of my audience, most of the people there in YouTube and Facebook are electric players. Not all of them. There's a lot of acoustic players, but many of them are electric players, okay? We have also piano players, sax players. There are several other people because, it's a music theory channel, etc. But I'm curious what, in your opinion, are the strengths of acoustic guitar over other instruments, especially relative to the electric guitar. So for instance, what is easier to play on acoustic that is not going to be as easy or as effective on an electric?
Well, I think the kind of obvious thing would be the fact that you can get percussive sounds as well as obviously melodic sounds on the acoustic guitar. So this type of thing, you can get a nice groove going there, and it's reasonably, like, I'm not a big percussive guitar player. I wouldn't call myself a percussive acoustic guitar player, as popular as that's become in recent times. But that sort of stuff is not super hard to do at all. But it sounds good, and you can provide a groove for yourself at the same time as playing. So I don't think, well, you can certainly not do that on the electric guitar or any other instrument. So that's pretty original in that sense, that you've got the acoustics like that of an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, so I agree. Tapping here will not give the same effect. Okay, unless you put some sensor or some amplifier, but then what would be the point of that? If you start to have all this kind of drum pads all around, it's a different instrument. So on the acoustic, this comes more naturally. I remember once I've seen a concert by John Gom, don't know if you know, and he literally had a beat up guitar because okay, and it was pretty interesting. How consumed the guitar was in several points because it was slapping on all around the guitar. But that thing sounds great already. And right now you have your guitar and then you're in front of a microphone, right? You are amplified through. You're just in front of a microphone.
Yeah, just the mic that's picking up my voice. Yeah.
And because that tap sound amazing. Already as it is. No extra EQ needed or other things. So that's one thing I envy you acoustic players, is that you have a different kind of problems for tone, but once you get the tone, you have it. You don't have to patch around with pedals, amplifiers, and stuff.
That's it. It's I mean, you know, you can pick up an acoustic guitar and you're right to go. You know, it's very easy. It's not too big. It's not too heavy. It's ready to go. It's naturally amplified. I don't know. I mean, okay, maybe the harmonica or something like that. But you know, if you're talking about horns, well, they're obviously going to be pretty loud when you play. You know, you're going to have to play at a certain volume. Acoustic, you know, you got those dynamics you can control in pretty much any situation. So it's pretty versatile like that, and pretty handy. So, you know, that's certainly an advantage. And the other thing, perhaps, I mean, I think generally speaking, what you can do on an acoustic, you can do on an electric. But I think finger picking tends to feel a little bit, perhaps slightly easier on the acoustic guitar. You got a little bit more string to grab onto. There's a little bit more tension in the strings. So certainly you can finger pick, obviously, on an acoustic guitar, and it can sound fantastic. But I think finger picking might feel a little more natural to do on an acoustic guitar. So that would be another thing that comes to mind.
Now, let's say that, again, we have a lot of electric players in the audience. So let's say you are talking with an electric player, and this electric player wants to learn how to play the acoustic guitar. What kind of advice you will give them? What kind of tricks or gotchas or things we need to know we should have if I wanted to go from a primarily electric player to become an acoustic player?
Well, first thing would be not to play it like an electric, and that kind of sounds obvious, but I do see some people who play acoustic, or who you can tell they play electric guitar, and they're you know, playing around on an acoustic, and they're kind of playing it like an electric. So, I mean, I've probably done more acoustic gigs in my life than electric, and so I always enjoy looking at a tune and thinking, how can I arrange that to sound good on the acoustic? And it's not a matter of necessarily taking the song and going, I want to rearrange it and totally turn it on its head and create something completely different. It's just, how can I make that song sound good on the acoustic if it's, you know, more primarily electric song? So you got things the electric has that the acoustic doesn't, are things like, you know, it's got more sustain, electric. You got the distortion. You've got more, you know, ease of bending. You can bend on the acoustic to a degree, but not the same as the electric. So these are all things you got to compensate for when you're playing on an acoustic versus electric guitar. And so some of the things are subtle, but they make a big difference to just kind of taking an electric guitar part, say, and just trying to play it as is on the acoustic. It doesn't quite, you know, when you don't have that sustain behind you, and if there's a distorted part or something like that, or, you know, it doesn't quite transfer over as well.
Yeah, those are two instruments that look really similar, but then they are really different in practice. And again, the way of playing them is different. Again, the interface is the same. So if I learn a chord or a scale on the electric, it will work on the acoustic. But that doesn't mean that everything else is the same, essentially. It's really different. The idiom is different. The thing we play here and there would be different, and that's great.
Yeah, well, it's the other thing is thinking about the position you're going to play something. If it sounds great somewhere on the electric, you know, I tend to, you know, think if I can use open strings and things like that to create sustain and double stops to kind of compensate for distortion, to get a bit of a contrast sound to the single notes. It's these things, you know, you want to work with the dynamics of the instrument. So there are things that are just going to be different on the acoustic and suit. So it's things like that, you know, easier to bend. I mean, if I try and bend here at the 7th fret, I'm going to struggle to get a full step bend there. So I would move that to the 3rd fret. And so if I've got something around here, I'm not going to try and play it with, you know, bends that aren't hitting the mark. I'll either slide, that's an option to sort of compensate for the bend or to replace the bend. But if you still want the bend, there will be generally other areas on the fretboard that you could play the same riff, the same phrase, and get those bends. So you just got to think about where you want to play it on the guitar to suit whatever, you know, the makeup of the phrase is.
One metaphor I use with my students is it's like it's the same difference if you want between the piano and the organ. Okay, it's the interface is the same, the keyboard is the same, but the sound is different. The way of playing it is different. If you just play a piano piece on an organ or vice versa, they don't sound as good because it's not the idiom, it's not the sound or the music written for that specific instrument. Yeah. And but I think guitar players are really fortunate because I mean we get two instruments so different and we can pass from one to another relatively easy as long once we understand all these kind of idiomatic difference. Now, we were talking before this interview, and Simon, you were showing some time ago, by the way, and because that's something I've seen from you more than once. And since you guys may not know, but Simon and I we go way back. Okay, it's more than 10 years we know each other, I think. And despite being on completely opposite sides of the globe, okay, but Simon has a number of super interesting tricks for playing on acoustic guitar. Some of them I've learned, some of them I still struggle with, okay. But you were showing me that thing with the open strings, okay. And would you like to do that? Would you like to play that thing for us and then super slowly explain what you do? Because I know that, I mean, the first time I've seen it, it was mind bending for me. And then only when you slow down a lot, I was like, oh, now I get what he's doing. So will you show us that?
Sure. So I'll just play some stuff to demonstrate it first, and then we can break it down and whatever you want to do with that. So yeah, let me play. So that's a little demonstration, just a little bit of blues using that open string approach.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so here's the thing. The first impression looking at this is like, it actually looks fake because your fingers are barely moving and you hear all this stream of notes with big intervals and stuff, and your fingers are barely moving. So, I mean, I've met you, I've seen you do this live, okay? But even when I remember seeing you live, I'm like, no, that's not true. It's not really moving his fingers. So could you take maybe just the very beginning of it and dissect it for us note by note so that we have an idea what's happening? And again, not so much, maybe we can also learn it, but it's just to see what's the idea behind it and why it sounds that way.
Okay, so the basic principle is, first off, to playing keys that have a lot of open strings in them. So I was in the key of G to begin now, or G blues, so G mixolydian for the most part. I was following some of the chord changes, but so that's got a lot, like all the open strings are in the key of G, right? We've got E, we've got B, we've got G, D, A. So they're accessible. So because the basic concept is, if you've got an open string note in the riff, then play it with an open string, not a fretted note. Most times. I mean, you might play some fretted notes that are open strings in the riff too. It just depends how it sort of works out. So this, so if I take a little riff from, I think I did this. So if I play that riff just with fretted notes, it's going to sound like that, okay? But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, which notes can I, what are the open string notes? Then I replace them with the open strings. So I see that instead of, this little slide into G sharp and then going to this E note at the 9th fret on string 3, instead of playing that as E, fretted, I'll play it as an open string, okay? And then F sharp, and then here's my D sharp. Instead of going to the E again, which is the next note in the riff, I'm going to play an open string again. So instead of this, I'm going to go, and you can hear that resonating sound. And of course, my fingers aren't going to be as busy, like you said. That doesn't look like you're doing a whole lot because you're not, because you're eliminating a lot of the fretted notes. So, and so as that riff goes on, we got this little third harmonies descending and ending with the 6th harmony there. That's the tail end of that riff. So any of those notes that are open strings, that can be open strings, I want to replace with open strings. So first off, I got this D to B on the 4th string. So that B note on the 4th string, I'm going to play as an open B. So now I don't need my 3rd finger to do this. I can just play with my 1st finger and the open. And then the next, instead of going down to the B here, which I would do if I was playing a fretted version, 4th fret on the 3rd string, I will go, and then this little slight, typical little bluesy riff here. I slide from G to G sharp, and what do I do there? Oh yeah, instead of going from the G and sliding into G sharp, I play the open G and then the G sharp. And then I finish that on a fretted E note. I could finish it on an open E string, but I just prefer the sound at that point to be a fretted note. So the concept is to replace the majority, if not all, open string notes that are currently fretted notes with open strings, and you'll end up with a really cool sounding riff. If you're in the key B flat or E flat or something, you're not going to have many, right? So you couldn't do that.
Yeah. So it seems like half the battle is knowing what keys to use, and planning to use keys that have the notes in the open string, so E, B, G, D, A, and E, or maybe changing the tuning. Okay, but so you're gonna use mostly, definitely. But so you're gonna use mostly keys like G, D, maybe A, okay, C, okay, and the relative minors, because those are the keys that have more of those notes, which is. So that's important. I mean, it's the planning element. I mean, don't start writing something in E flat minor if you want to do that, because it's not going to happen. But it sounds great. I mean, it's again, I got pretty much so far when you were explaining. Yeah, no, that is. And then it was. Or something like that. But anyway, it's great. It sounds great. It even sounds great on a clean electric. I mean, but it sounds definitely better on acoustic, because on acoustic you have all the difference in sound between the acoustic and electric. And I know you know that, but maybe the people that are listening right now don't know, is that the acoustic has a full spectrum sound. So you have all the highs, all this kind of sparkly sound. The electric doesn't really have, because the pickups cut the sound between 6 to 8 kilohertz, so that we're missing all the top end. And if this sounds sparkly right now, it's because I have an overdrive pedal on with the treble at 10. Okay, so that the little distortion gives me back a bit of sparkle, but acoustic guitar has this naturally. You don't have to do anything, and it's perfectly balanced already because the builders balance the whole sound. So this sounds absolutely great. We had a comment. Let's see if I can. Yes, that electric guitarists hate open string notes, which is true. It's true because we have distortion. If you're playing clean guitar, we actually don't hate open string notes. There's plenty of riffs, okay, or other things that use open string notes, as long as you don't have too much distortion. But it is that in general, electric players tend to avoid open string, especially when they're improvising. So here's a question I would have, Simon, on this trick here. So are you painstakingly planning every single phrase, or you got so familiar with this idea that you're able to pretty much improvise using this idea? What it is? Because I mean, my first thing is like, this is gonna take a lot of planning for me to do. Which one it is?
Well, it's kind of both. I've spent considerable time over the years planning it out, thinking, okay, let me do an open string version of this melody or that melody or this solo or that solo, and as you do it more and more, you get more familiar with how it sort of fits under your fingers. There's patterns, and you go, oh yeah, okay, that's this sort of thing. Often, a lot of the time when you do this, you're either going to have notes that are constantly changing string. So you don't often get notes on the same string consecutively. So, if I'm playing up a scale with the open string approach, I didn't play any two notes consecutively on the same string in a row there. If I do get two strings.
Say that again. Say that again. The two note consecutively. Say that again. It's super important.
So at no point when I play this scale do I get two notes consecutively on the same string. So once I've played on one string, I'm changing to another, then I'm back, and it's and you get that it contributes to the tone of the sound as well as the open strings. But you can and will get notes consecutive on the same string, right, in a row. And when you do, I tend to continue the smooth sort of sound. I will always, I think pretty much always, legato those notes. I'll hammer on, I'll pull off, I'll slide the notes. So there's another way to play this scale that I played here. So that's another position I can play it where I do get some notes on the same string. So I'm going to legato when that happens. But then I will also still get notes that move back and forth between the strings. So there's these patterns and this formula, if you like, that tends to reveal itself to you when you take a riff and you identify the notes that you want to swap out and replace with the open strings. You just got to you want to make sure that the open string you're replacing, or that you're replacing the note with, is in the same octave. So if I've got a B note here, I've got a B open string, but it's not in the same octave, so I'm not going to replace that B note with the open string. So there is that, let's say, more sort of painstaking way to go about it, but it does get easier. But there are ways that, there's plenty of stuff that I will do that I won't work, sort of reverse engineer it from a fretted riff. So this sort of riff here, I would have no idea how to, I could work it out, but I can't play that fretted. That's just a little idea that works really nice. And it's sort of born from this approach. I mean, I can go into this if you like, in terms of the easy way to do this. Like, what's the easiest way to do this? And that would be that the picking hand is very much doing what you would do when you're playing a banjo. It's banjo rolls. So I'm using combinations of my thumb, index, middle. Sometimes I use my thumb, index, ring, and other combinations. I like to hear the sound of the ring finger. They're all got different tones. It's like your three-way switch on a guitar, or your fingers there. This is more like the bridge pickup to me. This is the, you know, they got different rhythms about them. So I like that twangier sound.
It's absolutely true. I think people don't realize how different the different fingers sound, and I agree too. Even for me, the ring tends to be the one with more highs, the one with more that penetrates more, okay, cuts through the mix in the sense of the other strings. But I want to underline one thing you were just saying, that you're trying to do the easiest thing possible, because you see, we are looking at that. I mean, at least I am. I'm pretty sure some people do at home. You're looking at this and thinking, this is incredibly complex. Okay, this is mental, and you're telling me, we try to do the simplest thing possible. Yeah, I think that's a better approach. Yes, you're just trying to put the notes that you can on the open string, and then try to finger it and play it in the simplest possible way. So, and I think that's important, because again, the first time I've seen what you were doing, and like, this style is way too complex for me. I'm never gonna be able to wrap my mind around that. But no, you have to think exactly the opposite way, in a sense. Okay, it's the simplest way, not the most complex way.
So yes, and so if you want to play around with this idea and have something that can be sounding great, you know, very soon, it's this pentatonic approach. It's kind of the basis of that riff that I played there. And so if I play in the key of E minor here, and I take let's say pattern 2, okay, in E minor pentatonic scale. So first off, I'll talk about the picking hand. So this banjo roll. So I'll, you know, as I say, thumb, index, middle, or thumb, index, ring finger. You can decide what feels good, but you want to get that rotation. You don't want to use the same finger twice in a row. That's not going to be efficient at all. So it's a rotating thing, and this becomes machine-like. It's you got various patterns that'll play, but a lot of it is basically a banjo roll. And what that is taking your thumb and plucking a string, then following with your index and your middle fingers. That's a forward banjo roll, ascending. And I can take that and work it up the string set. 6, 5, 4, 5, 4, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I can bring it back the same way. Middle, index, thumb, middle, index, thumb. So I'm going up and then coming back down. Okay, that's the basic approach with the picking hand. And I mean, you can take that and just apply it to chords, and that sounds good, right? That's just that pattern going up and down.
Just play that again. Just play it again.
So you can run up. Okay, so, and then you can, you know, put little runs in and things like that, right? So, but if we take that banjo roll pattern and we apply it to the pentatonic scale, there's a pattern here, I guess you call it like a little sequence in the pattern that's going to bring in the open strings. So basically what I do is pattern 2, I take the second note on the bottom string of pattern 2, which is under my pinky, 5th fret, and I play that with my thumb. That's the first part of my banjo roll. I take the first note of the pattern on the next string, which is under my second fret, first finger, and I play that with my index, and that's the next part of the banjo roll. And then that's the open 4th string in this case. So you got 2 pentatonic notes and an open 4th string. That's all you're going to be doing as you run up the pattern. You're just going to go 5th fret, 2nd fret, you know, 5th fret on string 6, 2nd on string 5, open 4th. And then you go to the next string set, 5th string, 2nd note of the pattern, 1st note of the pattern on the 4th string, and the open 3rd string. So now we've got, and and then I'm following the contour, the shape of the pattern here. So when I get to the 4th string, it's also the 5th fret. It's the 2nd fret also on string 3, and then the open 2nd string. So now when I get to the top 3 strings, I've got to bring my 2nd finger into the 4th fret because of the shape of the pattern. 1st finger plays the 3rd fret on string 2 and the open 1st string. So now we can ascend that pattern with the banjo roll, a consistent pattern in our picking hand, and a consistent sequence happening here in the scale shape. Right, so you can run up the pentatonic pattern with the banjo roll, and then you can bring it back down. You'd start with the fretted note on each of the strings, the first one of the 2 on the top string, the 2nd, and then the open string, and you can come down. And the great thing about this is that it works on any of the pentatonic scale patterns in keys like E minor, A minor. So if I play it up with pattern 3, exactly the same thing, only following the shape of pattern 3, it's going to sound different because the open strings are remaining constant, the notes are getting higher. So I could work my way up to pattern 5. It sounds different again, pattern 1. So, you know, you get all different sort of nuances from one shape to the next.
And those are just the pentatonic patterns, essentially. So in G major or E minor, essentially. So nothing strange. And I wanted to comment on one thing, because this, think of the banjo roll uses only 3 fingers on your right hand. So using the thumb, the index, and the middle. And for some of us who are electric guitar player, we use hybrid picking. So we have the pick, and we can have 2 fingers here. Okay. So considering that I never practiced this, okay? So let me see what I can do about all that. But it will be something like... or something similar, using the pick as opposed to using... the sound is a bit different, but the thing is, the beauty of what you're doing right now is that we can try to steal it for the electric, okay, using the pick and hybrid picking, and it's going to become a slightly different technique. So it's good that there is this kind of interplay. But again, it sounds great on your acoustic guitar. And so that's the other thing, is that you have your acoustic guitar in front of a microphone. I have an electric guitar through an overdrive, a delay, and an amplifier. So, and your guitar still sounds better than mine right now. I mean, for those things at least. Okay, so it's definitely you have a tone advantage there. But that's great, and it will work on all the pentatonic patterns because yes, of course, all the notes are in that scale. So yeah, wow, just wow. It sounds great.
The other thing is, what you're talking about, pick and fingers and so forth. You won't get the exact same sound, but you can use the same concept. Oh, you can with that, by the way. I'm not talking about. I mean, that's a great way to play too, and really easy to transfer back and forth between that approach and just flat picking. And I don't do this a lot myself. But you could take anything I've done now and just use a pick for every single note. Now, it's not going to be as efficient, but if you want something that's a little more sort of rubato and just got that nice open string sound, you can play these scales. Obviously, I don't do it a lot with a pick only, but you could play around with those ideas and create something from the same concept that sounds a little bit different as well. So you don't necessarily have to go into the finger picking to, get that element of the open strings resonating against the fretted notes.
Great. Before we go on to the next thing, I want to answer a few questions that we have in chat. And of course, guys, if you are in chat right now and you have questions, just write them because we're going to answer more questions at the end. But right now, there is one interesting one here. there is a little conversation on what fingers to use where. And there is this thing that's Justin here said that they learned to use the thumb to pluck the top three string. I'm assuming he's meaning the fourth, fifth, the D, A, and E string. And then Mario, and I know Mario is a classical guitar player, is saying instead that that's common in fingerstyle, but in classical or Spanish, this can vary according to the needs of the score. And we see you doing this banjo roll when you move the thumb up and down. So would you comment on how the thumb is used essentially? It's confined to the bottom three strings, or it's free for all, or there is some ideas behind there?
Well, yeah, it all comes down to context, and I appreciate it can be different in different genres of fingerstyle and so forth. I mean, for me, the starting point, if you're going to begin finger picking and you're going to be finger picking, chords, and I mean, this finger picking stuff will be in the category of soloing. So when you're soloing with finger picking, the thumb staying to the lower three strings kind of goes out the door. It's not always going to be the case that the thumb's just going to be playing the bass strings. But from just a general finger picking standpoint, the thumb, is going to be allocated for the bass strings, the lower three strings. Your index, middle, and ring fingers will play the top three strings, respectively. And that's your starting position. That's where you want to sort of your home base. That's where you're going to begin from. And then it comes down to context. So most times, your thumb will play the lower three strings and your fingers will play the top three strings. But it's not necessarily going to be the case that, your ring finger is always going to play that top string. I make my choice more about the tone, not the finger. I mean, sometimes one finger will suit better than another. And so, feel better, be more efficient perhaps for something that needs to be played fast or whatever. But most of the time it'll be the tone. So twangier sort of tone with my ring finger, a bit warmer with the middle. So I think Tommy Emmanuel speaks about his melody finger. He uses the same, if he's playing the melody as he's playing all the arrangement around it, he's got his melody finger, so that's going to be probably most likely because of the tone and the way he can get the melody to stand out from the accompaniment with that finger. So you don't want to sort of see that as, okay, I can't ever use my thumb to play the top three strings or my fingers to play the lower strings. But most times that's what it's going to be. But if we're talking about stuff like here today, it's soloing in a finger picking style. So, it's whatever suits the situation. So the banjo roll, you'll see your thumb will go right up to the top and back down and so forth. So that's my thoughts on that.
What's your take about anchoring the pinky or not anchoring the pinky, or using the pinky or not using the? I mean, I've never seen anybody actually finger pick with the pinky. I don't, and it's very uncomfortable. I've seen a lot of people anchoring the pinky down and then trying to finger pick. I don't anchor the pinky for some reason, but what's your take on that?
So I use the pinky occasionally for finger picking, and certainly if I'm picking some chords and I want to get that extra note in there, I will use the pinky sometimes, but that's pretty minimal and not all that really important. But definitely not anchoring the pinky, and this is a bit of a sticking point, because it depends. Like, there's anchoring the pinky and there's anchoring the pinky. So you see people sometimes, the pinky's here and it's got to be there because it's going to provide you with the stability, but it really restricts the movement of your fingers, and there's so much more tension in your arm and your hand as you play when your pinky's anchored down here. I can understand why, because it feels a bit more stable, but I won't anchor the pinky there because of those reasons. But you will hear someone like Tommy Emmanuel say he anchors the pinky, and that's true, but he's not putting it down here, holding on for dear life, lots of tension, playing. There's a big difference. He's Travis picking a lot of the time, which puts your hand on a different angle to the classical finger picking. It's more flat pick angle when you're Travis picking with the thumb pick and so forth. So his his pinky is resting on the body of the guitar, but it's certainly not anchored down like this and trying to pick, you know. So, you know, there's a difference to be sort of stated there about what's anchoring the pinky and not. If it's just resting there, that's fine in that context. But if you're going to, you know, play like this, you don't want the pinky on the body of the guitar at all.
So the point essentially is you can rest the pinky, but not rest the whole hand on the pinky. Okay, that seems to be the point. I mean, tell me if it's not, but this seems to be what you're saying right now.
Yeah. That's right. It's more on the side of the pinky there. When you're picking in styles that require you to have your hand a little bit more flat pick angle, fingers sort of a little bit more 45-degree angle to the strings as opposed to 90-degree. So, you know, if you're up like this, which you would be a lot of the time, yeah, the pinky just wants to be nice and relaxed, just hanging there along for the ride, but not really doing too much.
Very good. Okay, and I want to. This open string thing is great. Okay, and if people later want to go back, once we're done here, this video is gonna stay on YouTube, so you guys can go back, slow down everything that take what Simon was playing, put the speed of the video at 0.5. Okay, transcribe it note by note. That's what I'm gonna do later, by the way, too, because this good stuff is too good. But great. But right now I want to go on a slightly different thing, because you have another thing. You put up a video on your channel and about block chords, and they were doing interesting thing with those. And by the way, yes, you can mention your YouTube channel. So actually tell people that you have a YouTube channel, because guys, Simon practically just started this YouTube channel, and there is such a great material in there. Okay, in a short amount of time, you put up a lot of videos, and there is great, absolutely great material. If you are an acoustic player, you totally want to go and check that. How is your YouTube channel called right now?
Acoustic Guitar Lessons is what it's called. Yep. And weekly videos going up. There's a few on this technique and a whole bunch of other stuff. And you're talking about the block chords. So the block chords, I call them block chords. It's a name that you can use for them. They're basically, the ones I'll show here on the 4-3-2-1 string set. Okay, so sort of a block chord. It's all together compacted on, you know, 4 strings. And for me, it was the sort of stepping out of open chords and bar chords back when I started studying jazz late in the late 90s, and that was a real eye opener. And it was like, oh, okay, what are these chords? And I can play chords up and down the fretboard and actually understand what's going on. So basically, they're chords that fall on the top 4 strings. They're typically 7th chords, or they can be, you know, other extensions. But let's say we go with the dominant 7th chord. So they're little chords, inversions, that allow you to play, for example, an E7 chord in 4 different positions. Right, I've got root position down here. This is like your little D7 open chord moved up 2 frets to be E7, and your first finger comes in to play the root up the E on string 4 there. And so that's a root position E7 chord, but I can take that up and alter the shape to get the first inversion with the G sharp in the bass of an E7 chord there. So now I've got 2 positions I can play that chord. Similar shape. There's a bit you can sort of carry through from the first root position. Then I can take it up further and play a second inversion with the B in the bass, the 5th in the bass. And that's sort of coming off of the whole thing when you're learning chord shapes, for me, is you want to connect it into what you already know. If it's something that's just out there on its own, you're not going to be able to grab it in the moment. So you're looking to see how you can anchor these things down on the fretboard. Root notes help, but other shapes. And this one here relates to the root 5 E bar chord. You're just taking the little triad and putting the 7th, the D, on top. And there's your second inversion. And then you've got your third inversion with the 7th in the bass. And this one is the top 4 strings of the root 6 E7 bar chord. So you can relate them. This one here, if you look carefully at this one, it's really the C7 shape moved up to be E7, and then you're taking the root out and you're putting the fifth on top. So these shapes, whilst they can look totally new and foreign, a lot of the time you can link them back to shapes you know, and it helps, you anchor them down on the fretboard to remember and visualize, and finding the root notes. But the good thing about the block chords, or a good way to work with them, is once, let's say you've got the sevenths down here, you've got your dominant sevenths, E7, you only need to change one single note to make that a minor 7. So if you flat the G sharp, the third each time, you've got now the minor 7s. And you can go through each of those shapes, find the G sharp, make it a G, and you'll have your E minor 7s. If you take that dominant 7th and you raise the 7th, D to D sharp, here's your major 7th shapes that you could play off of. So it's not learning completely new shapes, and that's coming back to the point of being able to connect new shapes to previous shapes and see the common ground between them. So they're always great to learn like that, because you can very easily, work out the chords from each other, and it allows you to play, chords up and down the guitar. Now, in the key of E, this is great. I mean, there's lots of ways you can use these. They're great for comping in a jazz context. If we are in this finger picking context here, I like to use these sometimes with a bit of a Travis picking pattern. It could be Travis picking too, but just more the pattern than the style as a whole. And because it's the key of E, I can just use that low E. And add little additional things to the chords and so forth, and you can be picking and maintaining that lower end the whole time with the open E string, and alternating with whatever the bass note is in the chord on the 4th string, and get a really large range of where you can play your chords. Now, if we moved all those shapes to be A7 chords, so same shapes, different positions, then you got the open A string, of course, and you can do the same on an A. And as you can probably see where that could go, you could play through a blues in E or A, really, because they've both got the E and the A chords, and you've got your D open string. So there's a few, again, keys that will work well. And you could play through a whole 12 bar, maybe into an A. E. So you can, and there's all sorts of combinations you could do, because you can imagine 4 choices for each chord. You can do all sorts of combinations. They're almost endless, really. And anytime the B7 chord comes up, you can, I think I play the bar chord there, or I could be down here. So you can deal with the B7 and play some version of a B7 chord. But that's one way that you could use the block chords. And again, that's kind of tying in the open string connection a little bit too.
It's a great introduction to this thing, actually, especially the trick of going from the dominant chord to the minor 7 and the major 7th. I'm using a similar system to this in one of my courses, shameless plug. Okay, complete chord mastery. Okay, and we do all the 7th chord this way too, and we use it for chord melodies in that course. But it's great for comping too. And that's the thing; those things have multiple uses. Okay, and your approach here is absolutely great, especially the idea of taking just the dominant chord and playing a blues, so that you just learn the shapes and you take your time. And for anybody listening, following us, This is much easier if you take everything and write it on paper, okay? Because if you start doing everything straight on the fretboard, could be a bit hard. So you take what Simon was doing, you write it on paper, it makes sense. If what Simon was saying doesn't make sense to you yet, it's because you haven't learned yet a few of the things that in theory that you need to know before you do that. So you may not know what notes are in the E7th chord, or you may not know where the notes are in your fretboard. That's great. In this case, either Simon or I can help you write us, okay? Because that's what we do for a living, okay, essentially. So you guys write us, and we're going to help you on all that. But uh, again, for some people, what Simon was doing, it looks incredibly complex. It's really not, okay? It's really not. You just have those chords. And you use them, okay, in a blues chord progression. And again, another great idea is doing it in either E or A. You have at least a few of the bass open on the open strings, so it works great. Essentially, it just works great. And again, you can use this for soloing, okay? So if you're soloing, I don't know, in E. Okay, nothing really complex, but you can move those chords around and not just follow the straight rhythm of the comping, and then it becomes something like this, something in between comping and soloing. It's kind of a nice style essentially, and there is so much freedom here because you can really adapt these to different styles, different ideas, different ways of playing music, but the material is always the same. Okay, so it's just great. One thing I was noticing, and I don't know, Simon, if you know that, but those, you probably do, but all those chords here that you play on the top four strings are in jargon what we call drop two chords. The beautiful thing is that if you write something here, and then you take those exact notes, put them on the score, you have the exact ranges and the exact spacing to work with a saxophone section. So you're going to have the usual two alto, one tenor, one bari. Okay, and you just give them those four notes. Okay, and they will be able to play exactly there, and then it will work great to create this kind of big band arrangement. So, and Simon is using the exact same material to play, on the other hand, by himself on an acoustic guitar. So there's all this kind of connection between different kinds of music, and the theory and what we do, the ideas are always the same, which is just great. Just great. Thank you, Simon. This thing you just did right now is great. And I think people will have a lot of fun doing that. And again, if you guys have any problem, you just call us. Either one of us can help you. Let's answer some things from the chat. Okay. Let's see. We have these. Any tips on transposing standard tuning riffs to other tuning from E to B standard, for example? If with B standards you mean everything tuned down 4 frets, or for, five half steps, you just need to play everything five half step higher. Okay, so as long as you use E standard, the E flat standard, the D standard, the C sharp standard, all the shapes are the same. The problem happens when you start changing the relative interval pitches of the string. So you change the interval between the string, and then all the shapes change. Simon, do you use a lot of alternative tuning? So you are a fan of the standard tuning?
A lot of standard. I do a little bit. I mean, I'll drop the D when necessary. There are some, DAG-GAD and open G, to a point, but not a whole lot. That's certainly something I want to explore more, though, definitely, because being in DAG-GAD and playing with the open string stuff just gives it a whole different sort of nuance again. So it's a pretty cool sound, and being in an open tuning, it's kind of easier to stay in the tune because the guitar is set up specifically for a particular sound. So you can almost just kind of, take your chances and just do something, and it sounds pretty cool in terms of the open string stuff. So that's something I do kind of have, plan to explore a bit more. But I dabble, but I'm mainly in standard tuning.
Well, yes, same here. I prefer the standard tuning because it gives a lot of possibility, especially when changing key. But some of the open tuning are just great. That gut is one, but then there is that fad, okay, which is that gut with the G down to F, which is the modal D minor if you want. That tuning there, yes, lots of possibility, and very few people use it for some reason. But it's interesting. And then there is Kashmir. Okay, the Led Zeppelin song. If you don't play it in that gut, it's nearly impossible to play. When you want me to play it in that gut, it's like, this is so easy. So, but anyway, but yeah, just to answer Ace Man before, the guy who wrote the comment, if the whole guitar is tuned down a certain amount of step, you just need to take the same thing and play it higher. Okay, doing everything else is overcomplicating it. Okay, just play the same thing 5 frets higher if you are 5 frets down. It's just matter of wrapping your mind around it, and then it will become second nature to do that. Let me see what other interesting questions we have. We're doing the argument about what was different and what was the same for acoustic guitar, and it's interesting, same arguments for nylon string guitar. And I'm gonna give a partial answer here, is that I think the nylon string guitar has one advantage here for finger picking, like the spacing of the string is wider. So you can do more intricate stuff with your right hand because you have more spacing. But at the same time, the left, it needs to be a little bit more extended to get that. So probably it's a bit of a trade-off. But I remember on the nylon string, finger picking is way easier because of that. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, definitely. The neck's a little bit wider, so there's that, of course. I think I love the sound of nylon string guitar. I've got a couple of nylon string guitars, and I tend to be on the steel string more because of just the nature of what I do. But I find that the nylon string is more forgiving. If you make errors on the steel string, it kind of stands out a little bit more. And the nylon, it's a little more subtle, and so that's one of the differences I find, apart from just the sound, that it's a little bit more forgiving. You can kind of get away with things a little bit more on a nylon, I find.
And I think the nylons cover a lot of styles too. I mean, it's incredible in how many styles you can use a nylon guitar and sound at home in that style. I've heard nylon guitars using metal, okay, and they sound great. I mean, it's of course it's in the background with a lot of electric distortion on top, but you put in a nylon guitar, you just get this kind of extra attack sometimes. It's incredible. I mean, it's how versatile a nylon guitar can be. And before you were talking about double stops, and of course, somebody wants to hear a double stop. Can you give us a couple? Because you were saying that you were using double stop to compensate for not having distortion. Can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, sure. So you might be trying to get a big sound with, there in the. To get the contrast between the single notes and the double stop, or you get nice little. So that sort of thing, and a bit of attack, and you can get a bit of a contrast that's not the same, of course, but a similar contrast to clean to dirty. So of course you can do all those things on electric as well, but that's something that you might exploit a little bit more on the acoustic if you want to get that type of contrast going.
Yes, you can do it on electric. The thing is, it depends how much distortion you're using, because if you use too much distortion, then every double stop with just sounds too much. Okay, and then if you, it also depends how many notes you want to play at the same time. If you want to play one note at a time all the time, you can crank distortion to 10 and there's no problem. If you want to play double stops, if you want to play double stop with a big interval, like tens, okay, then if you have too much distortion, they're gonna start fighting a little bit of each other, okay? And again, completely to taste, by the way, because some people like to have a lot of distortion on those things. Great, if that's the thing in general for all of you guys at home. If you like it, yay, okay. But in general, that's what most people like. I mean, if you, the more note you play, the less distortion you want to have, and vice versa. And that's why many electric guitar players have a lot of pedals. Okay, so we can change. Okay, there was a question here: what's the problem with open strings with distortion? Again, it depends on how much distortion you have, and mine, that's not a lot of distortion at all. Okay, but let's say I have a little bit more distortion here. Okay, if you have this kind of distortion here, and you don't mute all the strings properly, it's hard to hear then the melody when. Okay, so the problem with open string is that they add noise. And again, mind, this is not out of distortion at all. It can be way worse than that, okay? But depending on your style, in the guitar you play, the amp you play, how much distortion you like, etc., the open string could be generating noise that takes away from the clarity of your playing. And again, could be if you instead like this sound. Okay, that's great. If you like it, you like it. Okay, there's definitely some place where this kind of sound can have an artistic meaning and it would be appropriate. Okay, when we talk about these things, it's always a rule of thumb. Okay, if you want to put a lot of distortion on several notes that are not harmonic with each other because you like the result, great. And if instead you don't want to. And again, you want to try all those things. So when I say that the electric guitar players have problems with the open string, I mean, in general, as a rule of thumb, I'm not trying to forbid anybody to play whatever they like, okay? Just making this clear, okay? So, a lot. But let's see if we have other questions here. Wait. Can you practice picking on nylon strings? Can practice picking on nylon strings help you get better on electric? Tell you what, probably no. Okay, I don't think so. If the idea is probably that you're going to have more resistance on a nylon string, but I don't think you're going to have more resistance on a nylon string. One thing that can help picking better on electric is trying to pick on a bass, because the strings are much harder and with much more spacing. But then again, you only want to do this a little bit and just to get the right strength in your hand. If you want to learn to pick on an electric, pick on an electric, and that would be the best thing. What do you say to this?
I would say yes, I understand, and it's just a thing to get through. And I've found when I've gone to America, you know, in those days where you could travel, and I've been doing training events over there, attending and so forth, and I'm on an electric for like 2-3 weeks. I come back and the acoustics just like, oh, you know, it's not so much blisters. I mean, my fingers are fine like that, but I just don't feel quite, you can feel the strings more, and I don't feel sort of as connected with my fingers on the instrument. And it takes a little bit, probably a week at least to kind of get the fingers back to where they were. So yeah, definitely a little rude awakening if you're used to electric and you jump on an acoustic, but you don't want to get discouraged with that, because there's the question of what's easier, acoustic or electric, and it's not really either. It's what you're used to. So I do play a lot of acoustic, obviously, so it's never a drama, except for if I don't play it for a little bit, which is probably the only time, is if I was away for something like that in America, and I haven't played acoustic specifically for a while.
Great. I'm gonna take just one last question here. Can you use an interval for double stop? For me, the answer is yes, to taste. Okay, I think, is your question, is the answer any different?
No, yeah, any two notes would be double stops. So tenths are really nice on or you've got the Blackbird. That's all totally based off of tenths, and yeah, double stops, six. Any two notes together is a double stop by definition, I believe. So absolutely, you can do that, and should explore that, because you get some really cool sounds, in any style, but certainly in fingerpicking.
Exactly, but yeah, thirds and sixths seems to be more popular, but any interval will work, and any interval has its place. So the more dissonant intervals can still work, and the more consonant interval can still work too. So it's complete, absolute artistic freedom there, as long as it sounds the way you like. Well, Simon, I understand you have you have a free ebook on your website, and I wanted to talk more about that because it looks really, really interesting.
Sure, yeah. So this is an ebook audio available on the website there at the web address that you see on your screen. And yeah, it's basically an introduction to the open string technique that we've been talking about a lot today. And in this ebook, it's specifically that approach I was running through before, the open string with the pentatonic scale. So this basically shows you the concept with that, specifically with the open string. So it goes into detail what I was briefly touching on earlier, so that you can run up and down with the banjo roll and the pentatonic scales. And then there's a whole bunch of refs, ideas that you can take and create with refs, all recorded, so you know exactly how they should sound. There's a bunch of E minor refs, A minor refs, variations of each other, so you can see how you can create a lot from nothing and get a lot of mileage from the riffs. And then towards the end of the ebook, there's 2 solos that I've created there, putting the refs that you've learnt in the ebook together, so you can see how you can put them together to create cool sounding solos and melodies. So that's available on the website there. It's free. You can check it out. And if you do and you've got questions about it, I would definitely invite you to contact me and ask. I'd be more than happy to clarify things, answer questions, etc. But that's what that ebook's about. So it's an introduction to the open string soloing technique with the pentatonic scales.
And you guys are gonna find the link in the description of this video on YouTube, and you should find it also on Facebook. And I have also one thing for you guys, if you want. Let me just. Whoop. There we are. No, wait. There we are. Okay, so that's a free ebook for you, and it teaches you how to find the right chords for a melody, so how to harmonize a melody if you have a melody and you struggle finding what are the right chords that go with it. This ebook, it's an introduction to this. It gives you several strategies that can be used, There's practically no previous knowledge required, but at the same time, there are some advanced strategies that you can use in there. So you can create very interesting harmonizations for your melodies, available for free, of course, at the link below. And you'll find the link also in the description below, so you can click it. Very good. So, Simon, thank you very much for coming to this live stream. And luckily, I mean, we're finding a time that worked for both of us, okay, given the extreme difference in time zone. So
thank you, Tommaso. Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor to be here on your channel and chatting with you. And I really appreciate everyone who's shown up, and I hope you've got something from it. And thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, not bad at a reasonable hour.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody in the chat, everybody to ask questions, everybody who's been with us in the past hour and some. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to have more videos as usual coming on Monday, and we're going to have more live streams in future. And if you guys have any questions, write your questions in the comment, in the chat, or just send me an email, or send Simon an email, no problem. And then, because we like hearing from you, okay? I mean, we teach guitar because we like teaching guitar, okay? So, thank you everybody for coming, and until next time, enjoy.